Would you ever open up an ice cream shop without knowing exactly how much the ice cream costs? Would you stand outside and wave at people and say, "Hey, come in. I'll pay you to eat my ice cream"? Of course not. Yet, so many communities that I've worked with have no understanding of their true costs. Today, we're going to fix that. Knowing what your cost of goods sold are, or in this case, we'll call them COGS, and ensuring that you have a gross profit margin of ideally 90%, it's absolutely critical to making sure that your premium educational community grows profitably instead of sinking into a horrible loss and sinking you into a valley of despair and a horrible bout of depression. Don't worry. If I'm speaking gibberish already, we'll have everything translated here for you very soon. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to calculate your COGS and set your prices confidently. I'm going to make it easy and safe for you to build a highly profitable community and ensure that you never run out of ice cream. Buy it for $1, sell it for $5. We're going to be ice cream barons here, friends. Anybody else hungry? If you're new here, my name is Matt, and I'm grateful for your time. I've been a passionate community builder throughout my entire life, and I started by creating the gaming subreddit r/competitive Overwatch. I grew it from zero to its first 150,000 members purely by commenting all across the web, which is a tactic I still use and highly recommend today for every community builder. I also spent nearly a decade at Monday.com as the first employee in the US. We built communities there together, and I hired hundreds of people personally, managing a team of 87 at one point. Two very quick things before we get started today. Number one, we're going to talk a lot of numbers. And numbers aren't my favorite thing, but they are important for any business owner to understand. And so it's going to be important for us to talk about, especially those numbers that end up filling up your bank account. Those are incredibly important to understand. Number two is I want you to question everything. I want you to ask me about specific points. Maybe I'm even going to get some things wrong. Don't trust a stranger on the internet. But if you want to know if something's actually true or have a discussion, post it in the comments. Let's go. I'm all here for it. I will always do my best to review them and get back to you guys quick. I have incredibly strong views. Building community is the only thing that's really going to matter in the very near future. And my goal here is that I want you to know, like, and trust me. And I am willing to go the extra mile to make that happen. Challenge me, question me, ask me for help. I'm here for it. Now, anytime somebody is getting into business, whether that's for the first time or if they're creating a brand new offer and they want to present it to their customers, the first really big question they're going to need to ask is, well, what do I charge for this thing? The unfortunate truth is that many creators, myself included for a long time, they kind of just guess. They pick a random number out of the hat because they think, well, I don't know. It sounds cheap. People will probably join. I feel good about this price. That is a huge mistake. Even worse, sometimes they just end up copying somebody else's. The most important thing that you got to do is zoom out. And first off, you need to take yourself out of the picture. Because what you need to be thinking about as a community-driven entrepreneur is the law of compensation. Earl Nightingale, amazing person, has this wonderful quote, and it says that your worth is directly proportional to the demand for your skills, the demand for your competency, and the difficulty of finding somebody else to do the exact same job. Let's break that down. The first quote, the need for what you do, that refers to the market demand that you have. Your ability to do it refers to your skills, your expertise, and your competence to make sure that you could do what's required of you. And then the difficulty in replacing you, that underscores the unique value that you bring to these potential challenges that somebody else has. And of course, finding another person with those exact same skills and experience, that's going to equate to whether or not somebody wants to leave and stop utilizing your services. So if you price your community or service too low, you could actually lose the credibility that you've been working so hard to get. You'll be that ice cream peddler on the side of the street that no one trusts because you can't get a good storefront. Now, let's say your price is too high, right? You'll scare away your biggest fans. And what ends up happening, right? You will exert a ton of effort and you will have little to no profit, or worse, You might even end up creating what will ultimately just be a dead community. So let me be super clear here. Our goal is at least an 80% gross profit margin on your community. And let's talk about gross profit for a second. When I was younger, I thought it was when you just made money on gross things like, putting gummy bears in your ice cream. All right, don't come at me. But simply gross profit equals revenue minus your cost of goods sold. Revenue is total money, COGS, cost of goods sold. That's the direct cost associated with producing or acquiring the goods or services that you sell. So this could be, for example, just raw materials, direct labor, manufacturing, etc. So many people that I have witnessed online, and I even saw a Reddit thread where people were associating COGS with tangible inventory. And some people would even tell you and get upvoted on these subreddits, for example, and giving advice that by having COGS, you have to have a physical product. An educational company actually came in there for tax questions, and somebody said, oh, you don't have COGS because you're providing an educational service. This only applies to physical, tangible things. No way. That is so not true. One of the most important things that you're going to need to understand as a community is your direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are those that wouldn't exist if you stopped providing this specific product or service. This could be something like an instructor fee, hosting for your school or circle or Discord community, payment processing, specialized tools or software. There's a whole bunch. There's also indirect costs, and these are going to be business expenses that aren't necessarily tied to a single product or service. Let's say you have an office and you have to rent it. You have salaries for your team. You have marketing that promotes the brand. And this is very important for accounting and tax treatment. So that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother video. Talk to your tax professional about those kinds of things. In practice, you absolutely should identify the direct costs that go into delivering your service. And that includes your time. So in our previous example, that means for every dollar that you earn, you keep 80 cents. If you had $100, you would earn $80. So why 80%? That is how you build a sustainable and scalable business. Top subscription-based businesses, which communities very closely mirror, those often have between 75 and 85% gross profit margins, often higher. If you're below 70%, people are going to have red flags go up when they look at what you're doing, especially if you're ever looking to sell the ownership of your community. This is going to cause you to struggle to grow. And we want your community to be a well-oiled, profit-driven machine. So you have money to reinvest and pay yourself and deliver great content without burning out. And guess what? When it comes to profit, you absolutely have to have oxygen to live, and profit is the oxygen of your business. That's why, even better, 90% gross profit margin is actually doubling the capacity for customers compared to 80%. I know what you mean. Wait a minute. 80 to 90%, that's only 10%, right? Think about it this way. Let's say in that $100 example, it costs you $20 to deliver a product that you sell. You sell it for $100, costs you $20 to deliver it. That's an 80% gross margin, right? Yay, we did it. But if it costs you only $10, half of 20, I'm good at math, guys, I promise. This allows you to fulfill your obligation, service that customer, and increases your gross profit margin from 80 to 90%. But going from 20 to 10 has doubled your capacity for customers. That means that the difference between 90 and 95 is also doubling again. You see here how much this matters in terms of growing a business. You might think 80 to 95 isn't that big of a range. It's actually massive. So before you guys come at me in the comments, there are, of course, a lot of external factors that contribute to those numbers, depending on how much it costs you to get them and these other factors to give you that net profit, which is what ends up being in your pocket at the end of the day. You just want to think about, how do I ensure that I have as high a profit margins as I can reasonably get with at least a minimum of 80%? And once you hit that 80%, how do you know that this is a price that people are happy to pay you? We're going to actually tackle that in another video coming soon. But you need to understand these things first. Number one, you have to have the inside out costs. These are like the internal things. How much does it actually cost you to serve a member and use that to set the baseline price for your community? In the example I gave above, that was reducing the cost of service from $20 to $10. So I'll give you a super simple formula for this just in a minute, so stick around. The second one is going to be these outside in, where the customer is actually perceiving of you. You could, in this example, have something that only costs you $20 to fulfill, but maybe you could sell it for $200. Finding out what price your audience thinks is fair, too cheap, or too expensive. There's a proven method with 4 questions called the Van Westendorp pricing model. That's going to show you the price range of what your customers accept. And it does sound like the name of a lead villain in a Marvel movie, but you will love how practical it is, and we will get into that very, very soon. When you combine these 2 things, your costs and your customer's mindset, we'll be able to pinpoint the exact price that hits the sweet spot. Your audience is going to feel that it's fair, and you will feel like you are getting great margins because you'll actually be getting great margins. And the bonus here is you should always be testing your pricing with a pilot group before going all in on these things. You're going to want to tweak your price over time using real feedback. And for a low ticket community, I very often see people starting with something criminally low, like $10, and raising it after you acquire a certain amount of members over a certain period of time. You'll eventually get to a point where it will be very hard for you to acquire customers. That's one way to go about doing this. And it works. People do it all of the time. But you're probably wondering now, okay, great. Margins are fun. We want the highest one possible. How do we actually end up doing this? Well, let's go with that internal math that we talked about earlier. We'll get into the fun part, surveying your ideal price from your audience in that next video coming up. We're going to also end up talking about how do you test these things. But ultimately, you will have a clear pricing strategy for your community that can be justified with hard data. There will be no more winging it. So if you've ever felt unsure about whether to charge $500 or $5,000, this is going to be where you get clarity. So the first thing, internal cost planning. You need to know your numbers. And we need to know what it costs you specifically to support each member of your community. And that is your direct cost per member. Now, if you have a community with 2 people in it and you're paying $100 for that community hosting platform, that's going to be $50 cost per member. Every member that you get beyond that, of course, will raise and lower those prices when those numbers fluctuate. This is that inside out part. So you'll be able to understand what it is per person. And of course, when those numbers change, you'll want to have and understand what those breakpoints are. But for now, let's just think about the high level here. Your platform or your software could be a part of this. We also mentioned the payment processing fees that could be a part of this. Let's say you charge $30 and the payment fees that the platform takes is 10%. That would be very high. But just as an example, that's $3 in costs right there. So you'll end up with 27 net, and that includes an additional 3 costs per member. Now, if you have content that you make or services that you produce that scale with your members, maybe you send every new member a t-shirt, or you buy food for when people show up to your in-person events, you give them stickers, whatever it might be. Let's say that ends up being $5 or $10 each. Maybe you run monthly Zoom workshops and you require a paid Zoom plan to do it. Or you have a co-host that you pay for their services to be able to do this. You want to divide those costs per expected attendee. And I know that's hard, but it will help you justify the price. For instance, you may pay a mod $500 a month and have them help you manage 100 members. That's $5 per member. Even if it's your time, give it a value, give it a good one. Don't be outrageous, but make sure that you value your time. Once you have all those things added up, there it is, your direct cost per member. And of course, while it will fluctuate, get a spreadsheet together. I'll give you some templates and some examples here. Let's say, for example, it comes out and it is $5 per member per month in costs to service them. And that'll include everything: the platform, the fees, the swag, the time, all of it. Now, here's the simple formula that we promised. Gross margin is the percentage of the price you keep after the costs. So once you have the price that you're charging, minus the cost that it takes for you to actually give that service to those people, multiply it by a certain number shown here, and that will give you your ideal gross profit margin. So Let's say that the price essentially would need to be 5 times your cost to be 80% or more. 90%, it would need to be 10 times your cost. 95, it would need to be 20. 99, it would need to be basically 100 times the cost. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Whether it's 25 or 250, will people pay that for my community per month? That is a great question, and we are not going to guess. That's where this next step comes in, asking your audience. But notice, we now have a very important piece of the puzzle. That is that below $25, I'd be under 80% profit margin in this scenario, right? So if my audience says we only want to pay $10, I'm either going to have to reduce the cost that it takes for me to provide this service, or understand I'm not going to hit my profit goals and I need to raise my prices. That is what I would keep in mind. I promise that easy formula, and there it is. Take your actual costs, multiply it by 5 or 10 or sometimes even 20, and get the numbers that you need. In my next video, we're going to flip the script and look at this from the outside perspective. What do your potential members think about your pricing? When you're ready, click here to subscribe, and you'll learn all about the Van Westendorp's pricing method coming in my next video. We'll see you next time.